Everybody in the staff team is significantly happier with the system and the support that we have now. So for councillors, for example, over the recent coronavirus lockdown, we've been able to maintain online meetings because all of our councillors have access to Teams via their tablets. So I can sit here in my front room, managing 19 councillors and 4 or 5 officers and members of the public, holding an online meeting with the integrated system that Clerical provided.
The one thing that I'm really pleased to see is that our actual councillor attendance at the meetings has actually been boosted. We're getting, virtually 100% attendance at all the meetings, which I think is a really good thing. And I am in no doubt whatsoever that's by the virtue of the fact that they're able to access the remote meetings via Teams.
Hello and welcome, and thank you for joining us to our new webinar on the key to hassle-free hybrid working and choosing the right cloud for your council. We're really welcome and really privileged that you've come to join us here today, and hopefully the next hour and a quarter is going to be really useful as you hear from our wonderful guests as they talk about all the things they're doing in their communities, at their councils, as well as in the sector as well. So really exciting session lined up for you everyone here today. So what we've got is we've got a busy session. We've got Steve Walker from Waddesdon Parish Council. Steve is going to be joining us talking what it's like to be a chair at a council that's modernised very rapidly, even before the buzzwords were around. And will really just give us his perspective on how when it's gone in places and areas it could be improved on, and hopefully pass that information on to small parish councils looking to do that. So Steve, thanks very much for joining us. We also have Delia Shepherd from Bletchley and Fenny Stratford Town Council. Now, Bletchley and Fenny Stratford Town Council, we modernised earlier on in the year, and well, we still are, to be honest. It doesn't stop this journey of modernisation, as we know. It doesn't just stop after you've moved. There's a whole raft of new wonderful features you can make use of at your council. And Delia's going to give us the perspective of a larger council and a clerk using all these tools and really just integrating them into a council whilst juggling all those other things that are going on and bits she's dealing with on a regular basis. So Delia, thanks for joining us. I'm really looking forward to your session. We also have John Mitchell from Microsoft. John, are you there? Okay, John's restarting his computer apparently, so we'll bring John on in a second. Hopefully it's silent. But John's come to join us to talk about Microsoft's products and tools. John works with the SME space for smaller organisations, small considered up to 300 users, I know. And John will just talk about all the wonderful security features, hybrid working tools that are available for your council to use, and some of the great benefits as well. So really excited to have John join us and talk about all the things that are going on at Microsoft at the moment. And then last but not least, we have Fran Borg-Wheeler, who will be talking to us from heart-centered leaders and talking to us really about being overwhelmed and not just looking at the technical side of things, but the human side of all this wonderful tech that really makes, not life easier, but certainly helps, but really talking about the human implications and managing your workload. And Fran, you've joined us at a couple of events in the past. You came to us at Practitioners Conference, and really exciting session, lots of energy and some useful tips. So really looking forward to that. And hi, John, thanks for joining us. I know you had some connectivity issues, but brilliant. So it's going to be a really busy session. First of all, before we dip into it, I'm just going to do a bit of talking about really what this event's all about, really, and some of the things we're trying to highlight. But thanks ever so much, guests, and we'll look forward to seeing you in a moment. So as part of Cloudy IT's digital levelling up agenda, we started this back at the Practitioners Conference in February. What we're really doing is working with our partners, Microsoft, Logitech, Optima, as well as our councils, Bletchley, Wadston, to really focus on the sector as a whole and using all these technological tools available at your disposal to really improve your council, make it more engaging, deliver more services for less, and be more optimized. And we were really lucky to be joined by Linda Chandler, who is the regional government lead at Microsoft, to really talk about what Microsoft are doing in that space with smart towns, smart parishes. Obviously, it was smart cities, but we're now looking at the local government space. And all these buzzwords around it as well. We're talking about hyper local economies. The technology through COVID really did enable us to work smarter, work faster, and Microsoft's tools that are available, 365, Microsoft Teams, were a really useful platform to enable councillors to deliver more and do more. But equally, it doesn't happen magically. You have to invest both time and money to ensure that these wonderful things do happen. But if people want to see Linda speak at the Practitioners Conference, there is a recording available from SLCC, so please do go and have a look at that. And equally, Linda has gone and written a blog on our website, so please do go to our website and have a look at Linda's blog, which is really useful and has some really interesting perspectives on modernising as a council, as an organisation, and the benefits that are available as well. So, over the next 6 months, or not even just 6 months, we've launched this digital levelling up agenda, and we'll continue with all these events and all this engagement that we do. For instance, last week, we held an event talking about training and the importance of it, and obviously using tools to enable your staff, your councillors, to understand the software available to them and to utilise it on a day-to-day basis within their council. So this is one of many events we've got going on, and we'll talk a bit more about those events coming up in the future. So really exciting period of digital levelling up, and something we're really busy here, Cloudy, doing with our partners, councils and vendors as well. So before we go into the whole the webinar itself, we always just like to touch on some of the things that Cloudy does in the sector. We often get told that we don't mention some of the things we do, and we thought we'd just give it a bit of a plug before we go into it. So Cloudy IT, we have a suite of applications for the modern council. Our apps are built on the Microsoft platform. Cloudy are a cloud-first, Microsoft-first company, and our apps are designed to be low cost, low code, secure, and really easy to use. And Steve Walker, who also not only being a chair of a local council, heads up our app development program. And we'll be talking a bit later about our apps for the local government sector. We're talking things like allotments, park inspections, asset registers, stuff like that. So Steve will talk a bit about that later on. We also do agenda pack solutions. So we know the bread and butter of a clerk and an officer is to prepare the agenda pack, and it's often a real point of contention. Used to print and scan and copy all these agenda packs, but now you just share the agenda pack. It's so much easier. So that's the sort of thing that we're encouraging councils to do, and we've partnered with Decisions, who are an organisation, once again, a Microsoft-focused organisations who've built the modern agenda pack on top of Microsoft 365. That means it's integrated into Teams, Planner, Tasks, SharePoint, low cost, low code, really easy to use, but also allow you to really, drive those meetings forward. And certainly if you're council from Wales, which, they can meet virtually and vote, etc., then a product like Decisions is really useful. So yeah, Decisions, we've done a couple of events on Decisions, and we'd love to talk to anyone to discuss that further. So we also do IT support and training. So this is really the bread and butter of what we do. We will help you decide on which licenses are best for your council and help you through that journey of setting it up and providing the training to use it. And obviously Steve and Dee Dee will talk a bit later on about their experiences of our services, but obviously just 365 in general. So that's the bread and butter of stuff what we do. We also do broadcasting of council meetings, so really busy space at the moment. We're helping lots of councils up and down the country with our Logitech solutions that are so easy. You can put them out on a desk or set them up before you go into a meeting, and it just does it for you. We know as a clerk and officer, you've got a lot on your plate. You don't need to worry or don't want to be worrying about broadcasting your meeting. You want to turn it on, sit back, and obviously clerk the meeting. So our broadcasting solutions are really good at that, and we're really excited to be working with lots of partners, including NAUC, SLCC, etc., as well as lots of ALCs to help with their AGMs and all sorts of events. So really exciting. And then finally, we do web accessibility. Obviously, a really key thing, making sure your website is accessible for all. Microsoft have some really good tools around that, and John's a bit of an advocate for stuff like that, so maybe we'll touch on it a bit later. But we do web design, and we have a web accessibility tool to ensure that your website is always compliant. So a really useful thing there as well. So thanks ever so much. We're going to have a whistle-stop tour going through it now. What I'm going to do next is bring on or talk about our licensing and cloud fundamentals. This is a really key part. So obviously here at Cloudy, this session's all about choosing the right cloud for your council. And here at Cloudy, we really do believe that Microsoft 365 does tick all of those boxes. With a big focus on hybrid working, about flexibility, you do need the right cloud. You need to connect the dots, and regardless of size, whether you're a small parish council like Wadston or a large one like Bletchley and Fenny Stratford, choosing the right cloud is really important. You want something that's secure, easy to use, feature rich, and Microsoft provides all of those tools within the 365 environment. So we have a number of different licenses, and we've got them here on the screen. That means that you can be very flexible depending on your size of council and also the needs of your users. So as you can see here, we've got a basic license, which is what the councillors would be using, or people like groundskeepers, and that provides cloud storage, applications, emails, even Teams. So you've got there a single package that can do it all, so really useful. And then we have the standard or premium licenses, which are designed for those power users, officers, individuals, chairs who need all those tools at their disposal. But what the premium really does to bring it along is add many other features around security, which we know is so important now. The local government space is a bit of a sort of a hot topic, really. All your data is public. It means people can go to your website, find your councillor's details and impersonate them really easily. So having the right tools to protect you against that is really important. And what the premium does is it gives you security in the cloud, security on the device, and as well as security on your data as well. So really useful. And John will talk a bit later on about those premium features and what we're doing here at Cloudy as well. So what we wanted to show as well was this 365 wheel, which is really useful. So this wheel here actually shows you all the different apps that are included in your license. And a lot of people just aren't aware of them. You know, you sign into your Outlook and you use your Word and Excel and OneNote, but do you know that you've got access to Planner, To Do, Bookings, Forms, Delve? These are wonderful apps that are really useful. And, you know, if you're not using them, you're not really getting the value for money at the moment. And they're included free of charge. Things like Visio as well, you know, things like org charts and stuff like that. So you've got lots of different apps. And Steve is a bit of an expert on the apps, and we'll talk a bit later on about how they could be used. But examples being the obvious ones about planning projects and stuff, but even managing your bookings and visits to, say, cemeteries and allotments and for inspections. These apps can be used to do that and be automated. So what we're talking about here is a full modernization suite. We're talking about doing the basics well and better than you maybe are doing at the moment and make life easier, but we're talking about doing the more advanced stuff as well to be much more productive and encourage that hybrid way of working where you and your colleagues can work seamlessly from multiple locations and be super productive and obviously serve the people in your communities as well. So really exciting space, and we're now going to talk to obviously our colleagues now to hear more about it. So Steve Walker, are you there?
Hey David, good morning. Hey all.
Yeah, brilliant, Steve. So thanks for joining us. So Steve wears a couple of hats here at Cloudy. So first and foremost, you're a chair of Waddesdon Parish Council, Steve, and you've been a chair for a while there. So do you want to tell us a bit about the Waddesdon Parish Council and what you're doing over there?
Yeah, thank you, David. Yes, so about 2014, 2015, we're a relatively sort of small parish council. There's 8 councillors, and we have a clerk and an assistant clerk that works part-time. We're in a relatively busy parish. We have devolved services, so we have a lot of additional workload. We have a cemetery and allotments, and we have a play park and a playing field. So we've got quite a few sites that we have to manage. And I want to say 2014, we began looking at how we could do this better. The clerk was doing everything in Excel. She was saving everything in there, printing it off. Agendas were manually produced, and then of course delivered to the councillors. Not everybody was using email. A lot of people have got their own personal email addresses, and obviously everybody nowadays understands that it's not very good to be sending things to mycouncillor@gmail.com and so forth. And there's some technical reasons why that's probably not the best. And we'd looked at all of this back then and thought, what could we do? And at the time, the government was offering incentives to certain size councils like ours to sort of boost our digital footprint, and with some support towards a website and the design, and of course digital devices. So we used the money that we received in a grant to equip our councillors and the clerk with iPads, and set ourselves up on our cloud journey. But obviously a lot of this was new back then, so we sort of picked services from the major providers, and of course a couple of sort of legacy email programs we used to sort of communicate. But it was the beginning of where we are now. And the dividends were almost instant from adopting that.
And Steve, it's really interesting because obviously as a council, as a chair, you're very techy. You're in that space, so your council thankfully have you to rely on to really sort of call upon in terms of what tech should we be looking at and where can we steer that. But it's not always the case, is it, for parish councils? They're often led to fend for themselves, and they do know they have to modernise. They can't be using personal email addresses. There are more efficient ways of doing things. And how have you found that at Waddesdon, in terms of your transformation to using the cloud and council issued devices?
Well, that was where we were relatively lucky that I have a background in information technology. But as you say, there are many councils that don't have that resource. They don't have access to somebody who's able to come in and say, you should do this. So I'll put a couple of notes together earlier on. And what we'd done originally we'd use some Google for some storage, Apple Photos for putting information up, and Outlook for email using a third-party system. It wasn't Microsoft 365. Our implementation was probably similar to a lot of early adopters, whether they be small or large parish, and maybe some town councils where they may not have access to a technical person or a member of their team or a counsellor, and they've gone and had a look online to see what you could do. So it wasn't it worked, but it didn't work brilliantly. There were some challenges. You couldn't always share things between each app. Excuse me. Oh, bless me. Each app easily, and this was where that impacted adoption, because you had to go and say to everybody, store your pictures here and your documents are here, and then you get David, it was very, very considering we'd got some help. I can imagine how frustrating it would be then for a council that didn't have any help and that were trying to muddle through sharing a picture shared on Apple to their Google Drive to print off in Word. It was terrible, David.
Absolutely. And we do see it time and time again where, people sort of, sort of opinions of the tech is that it doesn't work properly and it's not a great experience. And it's understandable when you describe scenarios like that. I mean, I don't think I'd have a great experience of it either. And, that's the great thing that we've seen with the development of 365 is the simplicity around it, back in the day when you set an email address up on a device, what it's like, Steve, you need 5 bits of information, wouldn't you? The outgoing server, the ingoing server, the SSL, just trying to set that up on a councillor's device. Good luck, But now it's just, an email address, a password, you sign in. You download the app from the App Store on your iOS or your Android device. So the basics we expect to work and are very simple to do, thank goodness. And then that allows us really to look at the more advanced stuff, which we still know isn't super advanced, but it's just a different way of working. Rather than attaching stuff, you share stuff, etc. and stuff. And certainly about data leakage as well. We've got to make sure that as when you're a council, you have access to the important information. Of course you do, but equally when you aren't a council, you don't want that on your personal device, and you want to make sure that when your time is up, that you can move on and your data is secure back at the council.
Yes, exactly. This was one of the challenges we faced. We had multiple sign-ons to multiple services. So you'd be logging into 3 or 4 online services and your data was spread across them. So, again, managing this as an individual, we all know how challenging it is when we've forgotten the password to that one account we set up years ago. If you multiply that now by 12 people all forgetting their different passwords and they've all got 3 or 4 services each, it's 50 passwords, and that level of support begins to weigh down, especially if this is left to the clerk to try desperately to manage. So again, this was one of the efficiency savings we made with moving to Microsoft 365 wholly, was you only had that one login. Once they'd logged in with their email address and their password, that was it. They were on the system and they could access everything in one place. There was no need then to keep remembering differing accounts, or and I think everybody either watching now or in their council will realize people tend to oversimplify passwords if there's more than one account, and that can lead to trouble in the future with data security and account impersonation, because if their login is councillor X and their password is council 1 or the council name or something exceptionally simple, it isn't hard for those people to get hold of that information, and that can lead to a lot of security problems. So this move to 365, this secure single login, meant that you were no longer continually needing to remember and update separate passwords. You just got your one master password for your account, which you then could keep secure.
Absolutely. And as we know, we've got things like multi-factor authentication and the security features, which, John's going to talk about a bit later on. But, what you get out of the box with Microsoft is a whole suite of security tools and, little examples, like if someone emails you from outside of your domain, it will flag up and say, be careful, just a little message at the top. This is an external person. So just double check things, look at their email address, make sure it's not a Gmail instead of what should be an official domain as well. Just human things, and equally, other abilities like, being able to block off access from different countries. Something we do here at standard for Cloudy IT is ensure that there's no remote logins to anyone's email address from anywhere outside the UK, which is great because that just cuts down again the amount of opportunity for account to be hacked and stuff like that. But you get all these features built into 365. It's a great product, and obviously you're using it to great success at Waddesdon Parish Council, which is great to hear. And if you could provide any tips and tricks, Steve, what would you say to councils that are looking to move to a cloud or get councillor devices? What would you say to them who are looking into this now?
I'm going to be brutally honest. Engage with a partner, engage with a reputable, recognised partner, and have them come and talk to the council and show what options are available before you could quite easily take a wrong turning that could both prove to be expensive, both in money and in time. I would say personally, engage with something. Fine, if it's not obviously Cloudy IT, if you've got someone that you have a working relationship with, speak to them about your thoughts on moving to the cloud and what you want to achieve. And this is one of the important things. And I say this a lot in meetings. What is it you don't want to do? And what is it you do want to do? Ask those questions. We want to be able to work remotely. We want to be able to share documents, but we don't want to have to keep printing things off. We don't want to have difficulty communicating with that. Put your list together and then give that to someone that you're happy to work with.
Great advice, Steve. And we're here at Cloudy, like Steve said, whether it's Cloudy or another provider, absolutely just seek professional advice. And what we've done here at Cloudy anyways, we've got all this equipment that we can come down and show you. This is one of the things we love to do, is jump in the car. We've got a box full of devices, different ones that councillors can have a go at, the chair, the officers as well, like Surface Go 3s, Lenovo tablets, Surface laptops, and play with it, see it in action, get a feel for it as well. Because like you said, when you're buying that many devices, it can be an expensive mistake. And certainly I would say as well, invest it as part of a strategy as well. You can't just provide the devices and hope it works. Provide the training and the support as well, and hopefully you'll get a great adoption that will really embed in the council. So Steve, well thanks ever so much. We've got to move on. We've got other guests, and you will be joining us a bit later on with
I'll see you in a while.
Yeah, your other hat on. But thanks ever so much. And if anyone's got any questions for Steve, please do put them in the comment section. Steve will be more than happy to answer them later on. But Steve, thank you, and catch up later on.
Thank you. See you shortly.
Yes. So great. That was Steve Walker from the chair of Waddesdon Parish Council. And now we're really grateful to be joined by Delia Shepherd. Delia, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. Hello, everyone.
Yeah, hi. Well, thank you for joining us, Delia. We really appreciate it. Super busy at the moment, in a very fast growing town with all sorts of initiatives going on. But it's great really to have you come and join us and speak about your perspectives of a council and the adoption of technology and the benefits that you see around that. And obviously, your colleague John joined us just last week to talk about our learning platform and the benefits that the council have seen from a proper e-learning strategy where you've got all this content. I know as we've had talked in the past that you're a big advocate of that and you've been using it to a bit of success, so maybe we could hear a bit about that. But before I do, I suppose if you just want to talk a bit about the Bletchley and Fenny Stratford Town Council and just let everyone know.
Yeah, sure. Well, we're a larger council, but I would say we were slightly one of the smaller, larger councils. Our precepts just 900, as you see on the slide, 963,259, and our budget's sort of over $1 million. We've got a range of services like councils of that size, as you would expect. We have our own, we have managed 6 allotment sites, we've got public toilets, we manage community centres. We work with a lot of partners. We do an awful lot of partnership working to deliver services out in the community, whether it be a community larder or a youth service or various different things. And they change from year to year. Depending on the council's priorities at any given time. So it's quite fast moving. During the pandemic, we changed dramatically our focus in terms of what we were doing. And one of the things that we pride ourselves on is being quite flexible and able to respond to the conditions out in the community at any given time. So 21 councillors, 11 employees, not all of them full-time, and not all of them located in the same office.
Absolutely. And you do have multiple sites as well, so you've got different halls, different buildings, and finding, I suppose, a solution that's flexible enough for that scenario is really important, isn't it? Because before home working, you were working remotely anyway, I suppose, weren't you?
We were, and our councillors were fairly prescient in that they were keen, although we had one main office base, which was a nice big open plan office, where it was really easy to communicate with everybody who's in that office. We always had people out in the community or out of the locations, and our councillors were prescient in wanting to make us resilient, so that if anything happened with that building, we'd have somewhere else where we could work, and so that people could work from home. Staff are so expensive. It's such an investment to take on a member of staff, particularly in the current climate, that we want to be able to enable them to be as productive as possible, whether that means working from home, working in a different location, not wasting time on journeys. It was all really important to my councillors. So we started on our journey towards remote working perhaps a bit before the pandemic, but the pandemic really focused our minds, and we just issued our councillors with tablets in March 2019. The timing couldn't have been better, really, or worse from their point of view. And we were moving to a more paper-light solution with the intention was that the tablets would be used primarily for meetings. Officers had a mixture of providers, the software and hardware. And our councillors, since GDPR was introduced, we'd moved on to Microsoft 365 for councillors for their basic tech needs. They were then provided with this tablet as well, which enabled them to participate in meetings remotely and using a meeting management package. Not decisions in this case, but we are interested in decisions. We're looking very carefully at that. Yeah, of
course. Well, and it's obviously, like you said there, like a lot of councils, you sort of already made that investment. You'd already you'd invest in working remotely, devices for councillors, etc. But I suppose sort of understand some of the frustrations around that was multiple partners, multiple vendors, suppliers. It can be restrictive in places. You could work from home, but could you contact your colleagues? Could you feel like you're working from home, but equally kind of still connecting with your colleagues in a real meaningful way?
Absolutely. I think what working from home meant was that people had a laptop and they could get onto the server, and that was it, kind of thing. And then we were relying on the normal forms of communication, email and telephone. And what's really changed for us is making use of Teams in a way that we never did before. We started the pandemic sort of using Zoom quite a lot because we found councillors and members of the public found it easier. But we've been converted to Teams, and Teams has changed during recent years, and we just use it all the time now. The building we're in now, which you can see on the slide, is a lovely listed Georgian building, but we're all in little rooms separate from each other. So we use Teams all the time, just to have conversations with people in different rooms, different parts of the building, as well as people who are in different locations. I love the fact that we can use Teams to have chats when we're on the phone to a member of the community or someone else. I can be talking to someone on the phone via Teams, and I can also send a message to a colleague in the next room to get a bit of information that I need to inform the conversation. It's just so useful, and it makes us so much more productive.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? I think that the element, it's a human element of working, isn't it? Where you can not just get to your data, but you get to your colleagues as well. And it's a joined up solution. And obviously, you were looking around to bring all of this together into a single package. And thankfully, we really appreciate that you chose Cloudy to do that. So thank you. And
I think one of the reasons we chose Cloudy is because of your sector experience. we were being supported well by a number of different providers, one of whom did have good experience in the sector, but they were only able to provide us with part of the solution that we wanted. And our main IT partner was not knowledgeable about the sector, and therefore they couldn't really design the right solution for us. And that was why we had so many different, we had Citrix, we had Office 365 for councils. We had so many bits and pieces in a sort of, I was really empathising with Waddenston's experience, because it was exactly the same. Too many providers, too many sign-ons, too many different pieces, and we've still got sector-specific software that we're using, but we've got a much more joined-up solution. We've got one place to go. Yeah.
No, exactly, and I think it's not unusual, the description of what you went through, Waddesdon went through. We all go through it, don't we? We grow as organisations, and we grab a service from here and a service from there, and great, but it does need a review from time to time. And thanks for mentioning that. That's one of the things that Cloudy do pride ourselves. We're really working in this space with our councils, with our associations. SLCC now can, we've got all these wonderful value adds which we've created in partnership with great vendors, Microsoft, but others, to really make sure that councils are seeing the true value of what they're using, and then obviously making sure it is value money for them as well. So I mean, you touched on Microsoft Teams and how it's changed, and that's really good to hear. A lot of organisations we put it into. I mean, it's great for large and small, absolutely, but we do really see the benefits when we get to sort of Bletchley's and Penny Stratford size, where you've got a building with people in different rooms, and obviously quite a busy office. And it just, I suppose, unifies the whole experience of your communication, doesn't it? So whether it's a telephone call, a video call, an instant message, it's all done through the same platform, isn't it? So less training.
Less training, and also we find that we've got part-time staff who are happy to jump on a call when they're at home. In the evenings when we're working with counsellors, we have so many virtual meetings now, whereas we used to always meet face to face. Counsellors prefer meeting face to face sometimes, not all of them. Some do, and obviously because of the legislation, we're meeting in meeting rooms. But we have a meeting room set up, a committee meeting room set up at the moment for hybrid working, where we have meetings that are people join. It's a hybrid, it's a genuine hybrid, so people join in different ways. And that's so useful, and we just save so much time through using that technology. Counsellors being able, instead of trailing down to the office, they can just log on to Teams, and we can have a 10-minute conversation that feels like a proper discussion, rather than exchange of emails and visits. That's
really so good to hear. Well, Dean, we always love to hear what councils and clerks are doing. We always learn stuff. It's really good, and hopefully pass it on to other people looking to do the same thing in their council. That's what it's all about, really. And just before we wrap up, Dean, I suppose obviously you haven't been using 365 for too long, but what's your favourite app, Delia? What would you, if another council looking to?
Well, for me personally, I love Planner. I love Planner because I'm going to be so interested to hear what Fran's got to say, because I'm overwhelmed all the time, and I'm sure many clerks out there feel the same way that I do. Absolutely overwhelmed. Planner is fantastic. You can use it at a more sophisticated level, or you can use the basic sort of tasks to get yourself, remind yourself of something you need to do in half an hour or something. It's wonderful. I love it.
We hear that a lot with Planner. I think it kind of suits quite nicely to a clerk and officer's role. Lots of tasks, sort of thrown at you on a regular basis, and you can't remember all of them. You need to put them somewhere. So where's the best place? And we actually, we look after a number of councils who use Planner quite advanced, actually. And we have Sally, the clerk at Wellingborough Town Council. She's going to come and join us for our happy hour session at the end of this month to talk about To Do, which is integrated into Planner. And we did a little section on that a couple of weeks ago, and it was really useful. I think even everyone was out there taking some notes on all these new features they could do, so really glad to hear that. And finally, I always ask this question: what advice would you have to any council officer, clerk, councillor looking to, looking at 365 or another product about modernising, really?
I think it's essential that councils drag themselves into the 20th and 21st century. And I know it can be challenging for clerks whose councillors are not on board with that, especially in small councils sometimes. But I think you have to go for it. You have to persist, because it's the only way to buy yourself more time and be more productive. It's the tools for the job. It's about having the relationship with your partners and your outside organisations that you work with. A lot of them will be using the tools that you know, the 365 tools and equivalents, and you've got to keep in the game and be able to engage with them and demonstrate that you're a modern, efficient, forward-looking organisation. And so I just go for it. I know it feels like you have to take time to do the research and find the right partner, and sometimes it feels for a client, I haven't really got time to do that, so I'll just carry on as I am. But it's well worth taking the time to investigate, find a good partner, and change your technology, because you will get more time in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing. You have to learn these things. That takes time out of your valuable time, but ultimately the benefits do mean that you do gain more time. And just before we move on, I'd just love to hear about, obviously, clip training. We've had some really good conversations where, and you know, over at Bletchley, we know you've been using our e-learning platform, which we provide to all councils. It's a lovely product that gives you drip learning campaigns and learning pathways. And yeah, I mean, what's anything to say about clip training, your benefits of it? Are you using it?
I think it's great. I think it because it's bite-sized bits, and that's really helpful for busy offices. They can, while they're having a sandwich at lunchtime, they can watch a clip. No, I'm not saying we don't give them a lunch hour. Of course we do. Of course we do. They're not expected to work through lunch, but you know, it's flexible and it's user friendly. The councillors like it who've used it. It's just a really good way to build up skills on a gradual basis without feeling that you've got to set aside an hour for some training.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's brilliant. That's asynchronous learning. So, well, Delia, thank you so much for coming on and speaking about your experience of Microsoft 365. And I'm sure there's been some great nuggets of information there for other clerks, officers, councillors who are thinking of making that step themselves. Delia will be joining us just at the end to answer any questions anyone has. So if you do have any comments, please do put them in the chat. But Delia, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch up with you later on. Cheers. Brilliant. So that was Delia there from Bletchley and Fen Stratford Town Council. And now we're joined by John Mitchell, who basically will be joining us to talk about Microsoft 365. So John, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, David. Yeah, very well. I like my job title on the previous slide, by the way. That was really excellent.
Yeah, that was
great promotion.
Brilliant. So, well, John, thanks very much for joining us. Really appreciate it. And it must be really exciting to hear all these things that the Microsoft ecosystem and platform is doing for all these parish and town councils.
Absolutely. You know, the reason I like working, David, with you and the team is not only your approach to early in career and that development in your community, which is absolutely first class. It's hearing from those customers that Microsoft as a massive organization, which most of its resources, right, point towards enterprise business and large public sector. It's through our partners that we get to hear the stories of the impact that we can make for smaller customers. And so it's totally inspiring to hear you know, some of those marginal gains that people are getting from the tools that we're using to make their work more productive and more enjoyable. We're under no illusion. We're on a journey, all of us here in this hybrid world. So when you asked me to join this webinar, I was really excited to do it, because this conversation is happening, you know, in the boardroom of the biggest banks, the biggest businesses in the world, and then all the way down into that small, medium business sector as well, as we all figure out what is the right approach. Because not one size will not fit all organizations. You've got to create a culture. And I think culture is the most important thing in all of this that enables your team to do great work. So yeah, it's awesome to be able to be here.
And it's interesting because the technology has been around for a while, hasn't it? This whole cloud stuff isn't new. I mean, obviously, you know, Microsoft are continuing, you know, improving. And Delia touched on that. You know, Teams wasn't the same product that it was at the beginning of COVID, but it is now, is it? I mean, huge amounts of change. But like you said, it's the culture, it's the people behind it and the support you give your staff and your colleagues and yourself to adopt it. And obviously that's why we've got the great lineup, and Fran will be talking about that a bit later. But John, I know you're going to be really talking about some of the great things at Microsoft and talk about that, the security features and what you're seeing as well. So I'll let you get into it, and I'll sit in the background. If you need anything, give me a shout. Look forward to it.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, if you could move, you'll be my slide navigator
I'll
for
be
today.
navigating the slides.
Thanks, David. So yeah, look, I wanted to, really give some insight about how Microsoft has been thinking about hybrid work for all of its customers, big and small, and sort of some of the technologies that's behind it and some of the approaches that we think that will help. And I'm really looking forward to the next section to hear about some of the tips, because I have no doubt that I'll find some tips in there as well that I can start using. But I'm starting with a quote from Satya Nadella, our CEO. And this is a quote that he made at the beginning of 2021. And that really summed up the impact that the pandemic had on the way that all of us were working. And you can see there, over the past year, no area has undergone more rapid transformation than the way we work. And as the world recovers, there's no going back. And that's a really important part there, right? We are a completely different group of people compared to the people that went, to work from home en masse back in March 2020. And that really, as I said, applied to all sizes of business. That collective experience that we've had in the last 2 years has left that lasting impression and fundamentally changed the way that we view the role that work has in our life, which is really powerful stuff. So if you go to the next slide for me, David, thank you very much. So if you fast forward 2 years, the working landscape has massively changed. We've just heard it from Steve and Delia, those changes that they've seen in your sector. And there are businesses out there that, are trying to go back to that old way of working. And they've faced huge challenges, sort of motivating their employees and ultimately retaining the talent that they want to use. I think some of our data showed us that 50% of business leaders wanted to get back to that full-time, back in the office scenario. And that simply isn't compatible with the needs of today's employees. And this great reshuffle, which people may have heard of, is the way that employees are actually rethinking their own worth equation, and they're voting with their feet. If the where they're working isn't providing them with the tools and the way to work at the time they want to work, then they're going to vote, as I say, with their feet. So that's why creating that culture that enables your employees to fit their work around their lives, it is so critical. People still want to do amazing work, powerful work. They want to achieve great things. But that new balance for life equation is very, very important. And these are kind of the 3 big pillars that we can see that have created that change. Being able to work, from multiple locations is absolutely critical for people. And we all would have felt that. You can see today that I'm working from my home. And this afternoon, I'm going to go into our office in Reading. And then in the evening, we're out as a team as well. So, people want to be able to move, geographically all of the time. The tools that people are using, they're very different, right? And people have started to add different tools to the toolkit that they work. And then they need to step back and think, right, have I created individual solutions for the challenges that we're facing? Is there a better way to do that? So it's more connected, because using these digital tools, it's all about creating productivity, right? And not holding it back. And then you've got that, the way that we work as well. And I'll talk about the meeting piece as well. I think that's really important. The pillar that's underneath all of those is that security piece. And that's really important for people to think about, because as we've gone through this change, we've created a greater attack surface for, unfortunately, those threat actors that are out there and those cyber criminals out there that will target businesses. And unfortunately, for example, there's been a 300% increase in ransomware attacks, for example, in the past year, and 50% of them are targeted at very small businesses. And it's interesting, because I speak to lots of businesses and small businesses, and they don't think they're a target because they don't have the financial clout, if you like, to go and pay those ransomware. But at scale, the sophistication is really frightening that is out there. But there are some things that people can do, to help themselves and really create that cyber security bubble for themselves and their business. Microsoft is a good partner to work with from that security point of view. We integrate the solution that we have within Office 365. And so that simplification, not getting in the way of your productivity, is really key. People might not know Microsoft's the largest digital security company in the world. Because we've got this unique scale globally, we can analyze 24 trillion digital threats daily, which is a frightening number, and we block 32 billion email attacks as well. So there's huge scalers there, and there's simple things we can do. And I think Steve talked about it earlier on the call. So for example, David, I think you mentioned multi-factor authentication. Now, Microsoft 365 comes with that two-step authentication to really make sure that it is you that's trying to log into your account. All Microsoft 365 tenants have multi-factor authentication. Only 20% are switched on. Roughly 20% are switched on. That simple move of creating that second authentication, maybe it's just, bringing it through to your mobile phone to get a code, those types of steps, that can remove 99.9% of identity thefts. So it's a really good step for people to take. So this is how the landscape has really changed in this new hybrid environment. It's very exciting for us with this new balance of work. We've got to have a security conscious mindset when we look at this. Next slide, David, please. So I pulled out a few stats from, we do an annual survey called the Work Index Trend. And this is a report that takes input from 31 countries from 31,000 employees. And it's really interesting in there. And you can see that first stat there, 73% of employees are saying that they really want flexibility in the work that they're doing. And more than 80% of leaders say that they expect to make major changes to accommodate that, which is really, really encouraging. But then at the same time, you've got 67% of employees saying that they want to work in collaboration as well, right? So we've got to give them the right tools to do that. There is also a trend to say people want to get back into the office, and the purpose to get back into the office is to meet their people and talk to their people, create those serendipitous moments when you can innovate as a team. So there's a paradox for teams to sort of work out in terms of people want flexibility, but they also want to have the opportunity to meet with their teams in the office. So creating that hybrid framework for your business, whatever size you are, is really important. But flexibility needs to be at the core of that. If you don't deliver that culture and flexibility, then you can see there that more than 40% of employees are considering leaving their business coming out of the pandemic. And actually, when you look at the younger generation, the Gen Z, it's actually up to 58% would look to move, and that's part of that great reshuffle. So this is why it's so important to create this hybrid environment. Have a really good approach to what your physical offices offer to people, but how you make sure there's a blend of that virtual and also the office piece. And I'll talk about that in a moment. Next slide, please, David. So I just put up, to show everybody a framework that our UK modern work team came up with for Microsoft as we as a business started to think about, well, how are we going to adapt the way that we're going to work? So I will share it with people. I think the interesting thing here is, right, the three top pillars, it's not technology. You've got to look at your people. You've got to look at the places and the processes you've had, fundamentally how you do your business and how it will work in this new hybrid world. And then it's the technology that will wrap around that. And David, you mentioned how important accessibility and inclusiveness is, how important that is to make sure everybody is on this journey and everybody has the way to contribute to their work in the way that works for them. That is how we drive productivity in our businesses. So I really like this framework. And that key point is experiment, try different things. For us at Microsoft, and I will mention it, every single meeting has to be hybrid. Okay. We have to make sure we create an option for people to dial in remotely, and we have to make sure there's an option to have it, be in the meeting room as well. And then you really are being inclusive and helping everybody work in the way that they want. Next slide, please, Dave. So when you think about innovation with Microsoft 365, that's the point you were making around Teams was around before, the pandemic. And as we moved into the pandemic and we were able to look at the telemetry and the signals, we've created new features with the feedback that we've got from our customers to help us improve those the solutions that we have. But this is the evolution since we launched Office 365 in 2011. You can see some of the new apps that came along. So Delia's Planner was launched in 2016, and absolutely we've seen that as a great way to organize and look after your business. I love the new virtual commute that we've put into Office 365 and Teams now. So at the end of the day, my virtual commute is a time period for me just to reflect and do what I would have done on that hour drive back from Reading, the office that we have at Microsoft, to think about, well, did I achieve what I wanted to do today? What have I left on the table? What do I want to think about tomorrow? So those sort of features can help you thrive in this new hybrid world that we're in. Teams is at the center of this. You can see it launched in 2017. There were 20 million users globally before the pandemic. And you fast forward to today, I think the last update we gave is 270 million users. And we are adding more and more features to it as that hub of where we work. Some of what I like to do and share some of my tips for people, you have focus mode that's available with you within Microsoft 365, Windows 11. And that allows you to just make sure you can create some time in your diary when notifications will not be coming through to you. If you want to keep your boss able to notify your individual people, you can do that, but you can create that focus space to really work on things that you know are on your to-do list. I can default now to create shorter meetings. I do this in Outlook. I make sure that my meetings are 25 minutes long. So that I've always got 5 minutes. I'm not going back to back if I'm on virtual calls. And I've also used bookings that you can see that's on here that launched in 2018. This is at the footer of my email. This allows anybody to go and click, see my schedule, and find a spot in my diary and book a meeting. This avoids the sort of 5 or 6 emails that you sometimes get. When are you available? I'm available next Wednesday at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. You start to use bookings for those personal meetings, and you can start to be really efficient and make those marginal gains. The feature I was going to mention, a couple of features I'm going to mention in Teams, you would have noticed the hands up feature. So the digital hands up, we want to give people the chance, if they're in a meeting, to contribute. And we had a hands up feature, which was really good. I was frustrated with the hands up feature because if I'm in a big meeting and there's multiple people have put their hands up, how do I know who was the first person? I want to create this kind of meeting etiquette in there. And then if you're using Teams recently, you will notice there is now a numbering system as well. So you can see who put their hand up first, who was second, who was third. So you can answer those questions. I think it's a really powerful feature, especially for some of the meetings that you guys will be having. And that inclusion is really important as well that I mentioned. You can turn on live captions in over 50 languages. You can record so that people can catch up on that meeting if they weren't able to attend at that time because they had something else going on in their life, but you wanted to make sure they could get back and look at that meeting. And they can go into the transcript and also see if their name was mentioned, for example. So they can go to the exact point. If there was a point on a 2-hour meeting where their name came up and there was an agenda point related to them, they can zoom into that place. So some really great features that are coming through on a single platform to help you be more productive. The final one I was going to share, David, on the next slide, which I really like, is I talked around how hybrid and creating hybrid meetings are really important for us. And we want every meeting to be hybrid so people can sign in from wherever they are, whether or not they're on site, in office, at home. And we launched this feature in March as well. It should be running a video. It's not running, David, but don't worry. We'll make sure we can I'll share this with you so you can put it. Oh, there we go. On the site. So when you're scheduling a meeting, knowing if the attendees will be joining in person or virtually can really help the organizer of that meeting understand, how, to create the right meeting, to book the right size space. So now in Outlook, when somebody receives a meeting invite, when they accept it, they can select and share where are they going to be. Are they going to be virtually or are they going to be in person? And by opening the calendar in the meeting in your calendar, you will then also be able to see who's turning up virtually and who's not. And you can change your decision, obviously, if that changes. That one thing really creates a really great hybrid approach to meetings to make sure they're really inclusive. And as you, as the organizer, have real clarity about how people will be joining it to drive a productive meeting. So look, there's my 15 minutes on our thoughts around hybrid and some of the approaches we've had to our framework and the way the product is changing. There is a suggest features button in Teams. If there's something in Teams that you think would be a great feature, suggest it to our engineers. Click that button, go through. That's how some of these new features come through, which is really interesting. I've got a link here as well to our Work Lab site. You can see the work index trends report in here that I mentioned, really fascinating around, what's been happening with hybrid. There's lots of other resources from Microsoft in there as well to help you as you're thinking about this. So David, I'll hand it back to you Hope that was a good session for you.
John, brilliant as always. Thank you so much. It was great actually to hear, I think, the clerks talk about certain experiences, and then you sort of really bring that out in terms of your presentation and what Microsoft are doing. So some great sort of full 360 there of, you know, the benefits of the technology, but also the human element as well and how important it is. So great as always. Thank you so much. We're going to have Fran come on now, and John is around afterwards to answer any questions anyone's got. So please do put them in now and put them on the screen. But John, thanks, and catch up very soon. So Fran, are you there?
I am. Hello there.
Hi, Fran. So thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. As we've mentioned, we've done a couple of events in the past, and I always love your slots because they're high energy, but you know, we just take a step back from the technology and we just think about all the things that we're now going through in terms of, you know, the ability to stay on top of our workload. And the technology is really useful, but it does cause everything just to go up a level, and that's why it's so important to hear about how we can manage that. So you've put together a really interesting piece about it, and I'm looking forward to listening to this. So I think everyone get your notepads out, get ready. And Fran, over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. And it's really lovely to be here with you all. I'm a leadership coach, consultant, and what I call a team boost trainer. And we're talking about stress today and overwhelm, which I'm sure is a familiar topic to many of you. And I'm sure you know that some stress is really good for us. You know, it can energize, motivate, challenge, and enhance our performance. But what happens when there's too much stress over a period of time? Well, that's what leads to overwhelm. And it reminds me a bit of a pan of simmering peas, you know, left on too high a heat. You've probably seen it when the lid flies off, the water spills all over the place and it extinguishes the gas flame. But why should we care about overwhelm? Well, medical research shows that a crazy 90% of all illnesses are stress related. And of course, this will then have an impact on your teams and the work you're doing, because it will lead to lower productivity and results. And at the end of the day, your council and your communities will suffer. So if you, like me, have experienced overwhelm at work recently, then you're not alone. Because according to a recent HR survey, 70% of us are stressed or overwhelmed at work. So let's get on to my 5 top tips, non-IT or techie tips, for your overwhelm busting toolkit. Number 1 is be aware of the signs, the warning signs. Don't ignore them. Listen to them. So in many people, you know, this might be things like exhaustion coupled with irritability. I love this word, a feeling of disenchantment. That kind of covers a multitude of sins, certainly my end. Or you might sort of end up having a really sore back or neck for no particular reason, as far as you know. So really pay attention to those warning signs. Number 2 is try and identify the cause of the overwhelm at work. I just want you to see how many of the following resonate with you. So it could be that you've got several assignments to complete all at once, or maybe you're trying to meet lots of really tight deadlines. Perhaps it's more of a lack of resources to do your job well, or accepting too much work from managers. Perhaps you're one of those people pleasers. You don't feel like you can say no. Or maybe it's not understanding or having full clarity around a particular assignment, or maybe a lack of confidence in your own work performance. And of course, it can be a combination of several of those. So number 3 is when you feel overwhelm coming, stop and ask what you need from yourself and others. Now, I'm sure some of you are probably thinking, why can't I just push through and get on with it like I normally do? Well, I had to learn it the hard way, because feeling overwhelmed and pushing through time after time was what led me to have 3 mini strokes, and for a consultant to tell me that I was a high risk of a full stroke. So now I stop when I'm feeling overwhelmed. I listen to my body and mind to find out what I need. Sometimes it might just be that you need to go for a lie down or a walk, maybe have a dance around your kitchen to your favourite track. You know, it's really important to extend yourself the same care that you would to a good friend or a loved one. It might just be simple thing like eating something or drinking. You can work for hours and suddenly realize you haven't stood up to go and get yourself a cup of tea. And break down those overwhelming projects into bite-sized steps. You might need to connect with your colleagues on a more human level. You know, with meetings online, sometimes we can be really focused on the agenda and forget all those nice bits, that connection that we used to really thrive from. And it might be that you need to reach out to your boss or your colleagues and just explain that you're struggling. It's really a sign of strength, not a weakness. You know, it could be that you could do a little bit more delegating of your non-priority tasks as well. So moving on to tip number 4, and I really loved what John said about fitting your work around your life. So number 4 tip is review your work-life boundaries. Scrap back-to-back meetings for sure. I like the sound of those 25-minute ones with a 5-minute break. You know, some of my coaching clients, they've done things like stopping working at the weekends, finishing their day at least twice a week by 6 and getting home. Maybe putting the laptop in a drawer or in a completely different room so you're not tempted at the end of the day to open it up and just answer those few emails, which of course then move on to bigger pieces of work. You might also want to remove your work emails from your personal phone and start saying no to unreasonable expectations or requests from external colleagues. So last but not least, work smarter, not harder. I remember telling my boss when I was a CEO of a charity that that was my aim for the year, and he really was not impressed, but I knew it was important. So I've just listed some of my productivity principles I can hope you can see on this donut circular image on the slide. And what it would be great if you could do, as I'm reading them out and explaining them, is if you can work out which of these you are really good at, and perhaps 1 or 2 that could do with a little bit more of your focus in order to nurture and promote your well-being, but also your productivity within the workplace. So I'm sure some of you have heard of the 80-20 rule, sometimes referred to as the Pareto principle. And this really says that if we look at the whole workload we've got at any one time, there's probably 20% that we really need to focus on in order to achieve our goals or our strategic objectives. And then we've got, big one for me, limit distractions. You know, working from home, quite a temptation to go and do the washing up or, you know, go and do some extra housework that doesn't need doing, or phone a friend perhaps. You know, so limiting those distractions, perhaps thinking about where you sit to work. It doesn't have to be at home. It could be in an empty cafe looking out at a beautiful view, for example, if that's going to boost your creativity. A growth mindset. I think this is around, you know, cultivating an environment in which we're not blaming, you know, we are encouraging people to learn and grow and make mistakes, because without them, we don't make anything. Passion and purpose. Just remembering that for most of us, we've actually chosen to do the line of work we're doing, and just reminding yourself what makes you feel really passionate within that role, so that when you're doing the difficult or menial tasks, there's a little bit more of a compelling vision underpinning it. And then we've got optimizing energy. I really like this one because it's about getting to know your own individual energy cycle. For example, it might be that, like me, I'm fine in the mornings, but I might have a bit of a dip in the afternoons. So I'm going to try and schedule my more challenging tasks for the morning, and then perhaps just do a little bit more of the mundane or administrative tasks, get my teeth in the mid-afternoon during that little bit of a slump. So then we've got resourcefulness, which a top American coach called Tony Robbins said something along these lines. It's never a question of resources. It's always about resourcefulness. And some of you may disagree with that, but I know, having run a small charity, there was a lot to do with resourcefulness and trying to make my life easier, my team's life easier, but maximizing the impact at the same time. And then we've got inspire versus command. For those of you that are responsible for or run teams, oh, so much easier if we can find a way to bring people along with us, as opposed to having to micromanage or follow up with loads of disciplinaries or performance management. So inspiring. those that you work with. And then we've got creating an environment where it's okay to debate and innovate, because, you know, as with the tech here, you know, we're looking for fresh solutions. We don't want to do things in the old way just because we've already done them, if there's a better way of achieving something. And then we've got clever collaboration. I'm one for networking, but not any old networking. You know, be quite wise with it. Think about who you need to speak to unlock a particular solution or to unlock a particular opportunity for you or your team. And then finally, last but not least, celebrate success. And I think this is so important individually and collectively as a team, probably at least once a week. Great for boosting your momentum, morale, well-being, and at the end of the day, productivity. So let's recap the 5 top tips. Number 1, be aware of the warning signs as they show in yourself for overwhelm. Don't ignore them. Number 2, identify the cause of the work overwhelm. Number 3, stop and ask what you need from yourself and others, and give yourself permission to do whatever it is you need to do. Number 4, review your work boundaries. And number 5, work smarter, not harder. So I hope you can identify one action to commit to promote and nurture your own well-being. And if any of you would like some support around overwhelm for yourself or your teams, feel free to reach out. Thanks for having me. Back to you, David.
Fran, absolutely brilliant. I think we all sort of nod in an agreement, and various aspects of that and various times we've all been through or going through as well. But Fran, we always really enjoy your sessions because we sort of step back from the tech and we think about all the implications that the tech has caused in some places, and you know, really useful. So thank you so much, and we'll do more events in the future. Absolutely, I'm sure there's a lot of people sort of maybe reflecting on what you've just said and thinking about how it applies to them. And we do cover different things as well. We don't always just stick to this, but this one's very, very useful nonetheless. But thank you. Fran will be answering questions at the end, so she'll be joining us. We haven't got too much longer left now. Only got 10 minutes left, and we're going to wrap up with my my next guest. So thanks, Fran. Speak to you soon. Steve, you're back again.
Hey, David. Hey, everybody.
Hi. So, Steve, some of the things that you've heard so far, pretty useful. That it's really interesting.
Really interesting, and I think there's a lot of commonality here, isn't there, between everybody that's spoken and what everybody experiences at a council, that techno fear occasionally. And I noticed Kimberly's put in the chat, and we'll go to Q&A later on, about how do you stop people being afraid of adopting new technologies? And as John said, we can't go back. You know, it's now. We're not going to look backwards. We're always going to look forwards. And I think that's one of the important points of today, isn't it? You know, technology moves forward, we have to move forward, councils have to move forward.
Absolutely. And there'll always be these change champions and individuals that drag everyone else along with them. We all move at different speeds. Some of the councils we work with, you know, just every year, it's the incremental improvements. It doesn't all happen at the same time. But obviously, you know, some of the interesting things John mentioned about the ecosystem, finding the right tools, the right applications. Steve has joined us as our local government lead here now. So not only is he a councillor, but he also heads up our app development and local government strategy as well. And Steve, you know, obviously we've got quite a few different tools at our fingertips here to really, you know, enable councils to adopt all this wonderful technology. And we'll talk about the Appy Hour in a session, which is Steve's monthly session he runs, which is a kind of a drop-in session, really, isn't it? It's quite light-hearted, where people can come along and just ask questions about apps and you demonstrate them. But what we do have is a Clerks Tech Forum where people can also collaborate on. So, Steve, I'll let you explain a bit about that now. Yeah,
so for those of you that are on social media, so if you're on Facebook, you can come and join us at the Clerks Tech Forum. There's a lot of clerks in there now. It's been growing quite rapidly over the last sort of few weeks. And what my goal is to have some subject matter that is, again, common. A lot of clerks ask questions, is sharing it with all clerks, so that this isolation, this concern that I don't really know what to do or what advice I need to follow, is sharing it between everybody, so that your experiences as clerks, as officers, as RFOs, put it in the forum, and we can talk about it. And again, not only myself are there are other members of the Cloudy team. We dip in and out. We've all got our areas that we are I want to say experts in, and we're happy to help. We can answer your questions. We can look at some of the issues and provide some guidance, or maybe just signpost you to a training video or something similar that you can go and have a look at. And it allows, like I say, clerks to chat to clerks, and we're there as well, aren't we, David?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what I really love about the tech forum, Steve, is how you put polls in there for what people want to see you talk about in your next happy hour, and then we deliver the session. We put the videos back there. People comment on it, and it's this sort of full 360 degree of engagement from end to end. And in there we've got Aline there from SLCC talking about their experience of Microsoft Teams phone system and how it's transformed them back when we modernized them at the beginning of COVID. So yeah, a really nice space for clerks, officers to come along, share best practice and engage with the team here and for content to be shared. So yeah, please do check it out. Yeah. And then we also have our happy hour. So Steve, do you want to explain what the happy hour session is then?
Yeah, so our happy hour, we've got some in-house apps that we've made, and there are obviously a lot of Microsoft apps. Microsoft 365 is not just Word and Excel. That there's a lot you get included in the bundle, and there are some fantastically powerful apps. Planner to do, obviously Teams. There are lots of apps inside 365, and what we try to do is a little bit of a lead from the Clerks Tech Forum, but we will want to focus on a couple. So it's on Teams, of course. It's monthly. We look at an app, so we will pick one from the 365 suite, and we'll pick one of our in-house apps that we've developed for councils with councils. So a park inspection app maybe, or our green spaces app, and then we might take a look at bookings, and that's good. We've got Sarah's coming up short, isn't she? She's coming on.
No, I think we've got Sally from Wellingborough next, and Sarah the month after.
So we've got a couple of clerks joining us in up and coming shows where they've seen the happy hour. We've focused on an app. They've had a conversation with us about it, and then they've deployed it and they're using it, and we're having them back on the show to talk about their successes that they've had with it. So we tend to drive it from what we're picking up on, obviously, social media, and the questions that we receive here at Cloudy from clerks and other staff members, and we focus on that. It again, as David said, it's that 360 view of what's going on and feeding back what we're receiving.
Absolutely, and I'm keen to move on. We've only got 4 minutes. I know. I'm really so sorry, Steve. But Steve, really useful. Thanks for talking about some of the things we're doing at Cloudy to encourage all of this sort of debate. We now have a couple of questions that have come in. So, Ryan, if you want to put everyone on the screen, if that's okay, we'll put the questions out to our guests. So you're going to put, there we go, brilliant. So Kimberly, I would like to ask Steve how his council reacted to using more IT. Some of mine have never experienced confidence using tech. Meetings lockdown very hard. So Steve, how would you answer Kimberly's question there?
Right, Kimberly, good morning to you. We did it in small chunks. So we introduced the councillors to the hardware, and we went for something simple first off. We went for email, how to use Outlook nicely, how to use it, the calendars and the meetings. We then introduced Teams, but we didn't go deep into Teams. We did the lightest parts of Teams, and we did a lot of hand-holding sessions. We had councillors in small groups, and clearly there was a divide in their own knowledge and their skills. So what we tended to do was to pair a couple of more IT proficient councillors up with those that weren't so proficient, and they made small buddy groups, and they then could work together, and that helped them adopt what we were looking at using. And slowly councillors would say, oh, could we do this or could we do that? That's a very good idea. Let's explore how we do that. And again, we would do them in small groups, and those that were more familiar with technology, we encourage them to sort of help the other councillors that were slightly reluctant. And we tried to take away that fear of technology. We tried to show the benefits of it. That time you turn up at the meeting and you've left your meeting notes and the agenda in the car, and you think, oh, I haven't got it with me, or it's at home. Having it there electronically meant that document you'd printed off and you forgot to bring, you'd got it, and how that benefited and how that helped. And that worked nicely. And again, it's an ongoing process. We have regular get-togethers and we have chats about what we're doing and what's new and how we're going to be doing something. And again, it's important we involve our clerk and our assistant clerk are always involved in these discussions. So again, if councillors have an issue, the clerks and assistant clerk are able to help, are able to answer that question.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Stephen. We definitely find the adoption of the technology is not just difficult for the officers, but councillors as well. It affects the whole council. And Dean, I can see you sort of nodding your head in agreement. How was it at Bletchley and Fenny Stratford when you deployed the tablets, and how was the councillors' reaction? Any tips for Kimberley there?
Well, it was extremely difficult because we were doing it in the middle of the pandemic. And I can remember standing at the end of a garage with a tablet in my hand and a councillor at the end of her garage at the other end with a tablet in her hand, and we were shouting across to each other. And I think people respond differently, don't they? We found that exactly what Steve said. If you can team your councillors up with the ones who are struggling, if you can team them up with someone else who isn't struggling as much, they often find it easier to ask silly questions of their fellow councillors than they do of officers, in our experience. It's not always the case. Sometimes it's the other way around. But I think, team them up with someone, and if you can get your champions, they will lead the rest of the cohort gradually, but you can't expect it all to happen in a flash.
Absolutely.
That was our experience.
Yeah, of course. So, which is, pretty similar across the whole sector, isn't it? So that's really good to hear. Thank you so much. We're at 11:15 now, and we've run out of time a bit here. So I'm really sorry, because there are a couple more questions. And but what I think we will do is we are going to run this session again. We're going to let everyone enjoy their summers and stuff, but after September, we'll probably invite people back again to talk. So if anyone does have any questions, they can put them back there, and we'll also forward those on as well. But yeah, Fran and John, thank you so much for coming along, not from a council's perspective, but certainly, just the technology, the people, and what's going on and the benefits that it brings to our councils and partners is just incredible. I think it's a team effort, isn't it, really? And with that comes great success and better ways of working. So thanks for joining us, guests. We really appreciate it, and we'll look forward to seeing you later. I'm just going to quickly mercifully plug some of the other events we've got here going on at Cloudy. So bear with me. There we go. So as I've mentioned, we have our happy hour that Steve runs once a month. We're also at the SLCC New Clerk webinar, so please do join us for that. We've also got our decision hour that Steve is hosting, where we basically bring people together to talk about agenda packs digitally, and we're going to facilitate that. So really exciting little place for people just to chat informally and feel comfortable asking those questions about how it was successful at their council. And then we're at the SLCC National Conference as well. This is as well as being at lots of different events. We're at, I think, Norfolk next week, Yorkshire the week after. So lots of different AGMs and ALCs doing stuff. But thank you so much for joining us. If you've got any feedback on the session, we'd love to hear it. Please do scan the QR code. It was lovely to get our guests to come along and talk about their experiences in their councils and organisations about the technology and the people. And we look forward to coming and join you again soon. But guests, thank you so much. Speak to you soon, and look after yourself, everyone. And we'll look forward to doing you in the future. Bye-bye. Cheers.
Hi, I'm Rachel Gorge. I'm the office manager at Bracknell Town Council. We're the largest parish council in the Bracknell Forest borough. We have 12 wards and 27 councillors. We've decided that it's time to upgrade, and this does mean at this point upgrading everything, because without changing the internet we can't move on to Cloudy and using Microsoft Teams and things like that. But hybrid meetings are something that it's going to be so useful for us into the future. So even though legally at the moment we're not allowed to hold hybrid meetings, we can involve the public through the hybrid technology that Cloudy have installed for us. So we can allow people who don't live locally to do presentations for the council. We can allow public to join from the comfort of their own homes. So part of installing the hybrid meeting equipment is to try to reduce our carbon footprint a bit, and this is one of the ways we're going to start to do that. The system that you've installed for us was tailored to our needs. So we have quite a large council chamber, having 27 councillors. We also then have at least 3 officers present when we have a full council meeting. Sometimes we can have the public in the room, and the shape of our room, the shape of our table, and how people sit in the meetings was really a big part of it. You discussed all of the different options with us to make sure that we were getting the right level of technology for the size of room and the amount of people that we're going to have in there. After doing a test with you after you installed it, I'm absolutely amazed that you don't have to shout when you're at the opposite end of the room to be heard, and also it's not blasting in your ears, which other companies were concerned about. The strength of the speakers you might have to use could impact those people sitting closest to them, but you've managed to work out a system that will work for everybody in that room. The installation process from Cloudy was great as well. We had, again, lots of communication when it came to sorting out dates and organising parking and everything that we needed for us to be organised. You arrived with all of the equipment that you needed, and you just got on with it. The one thing I would say is that I was sad that you didn't have a lunch break and you just carried on straight through because you were working non-stop for all those hours that you were there. You were relentless, let's be honest. You were relentless. You guys you got the job done. It looks fantastic. You tidied up afterwards, and it is brilliant. From the beginning of dealing with Cloudy, the customer service has been exceptional. I've not had as many demos in fact, I've had no demos with other companies, whereas you did 3 demos for us. You visited us several times, we've had several calls, and just that connection that we've got and the communication has been second to none, and that was a real big pushing point in us moving with Cloudy, especially for our hybrid equipment.